Hello and welcome to FP Live. I'm Ravi Agrawal, Foreign Policy's Editor-in-Chief. The relationship between the world's two biggest economies is in its most serious crisis in nearly 5 decades. Each time the United States has imposed higher tariffs on China in recent weeks, Beijing has retaliated in kind. The latest, if you can keep up, is that US tariffs are now effectively near 150%, with exclusions for cell phones and electronic components of various types, while China has suspended exports of critical minerals and magnets used by high-end auto and defense manufacturers. Now, the White House has wavered on most of its bilateral tariffs in the last 3 months, as you know. But there's been one constant. It sees China as a serious economic threat. Where does this end? Which economy will suffer more pain? In a moment, I will turn to two top experts for their views. If this is your first time joining us on FP Live, welcome. We take some subscriber questions. Dozens of you have written in already. If you would like to join in, use the code FP Live for a discount. We are also a podcast. Just look for FP Live on your favorite audio platform. So, are the United States and China in a trade war? How much will it hurt the global economy? And where does it stop? Scott Kennedy is a senior advisor and trustee chair in Chinese business and economics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's been traveling to China for 37 years. And Zongyuan Zoe Liu is a senior fellow for China Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, as well as a columnist at Foreign Policy. Zoe, Scott, welcome to you both.
Great to be here.
Scott,
Thank
let
you.
me begin with you. So you recently returned from China. Talk to us a bit about how Beijing has been preparing for a trade war and how far you think they're willing to go.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I get a lot of jet lag. That's my main research method, and I've been doing it for quite some time. My last few years of traveling to China, post-pandemic, there's been a big malaise in China. The economy has grown very slowly. It never really bounced back, and there's been questioning of whether the leadership knows what they're doing and whether they will reform and change direction to make things better. But when I was there this past month, the mood had changed dramatically. Part of that was DeepSeek and China's tech successes. Part of it is the announcement of a stimulus. But really, the big change occurred 12 time zones away in Washington, D.C. It's President Trump and what he means for the world and the contrast with China. So China looked like it was kind of just stumbling along and not engaging in change. But now, in contrast to the radical revolutionary change, what some Chinese say is the American Cultural Revolution, China looks stable and predictable by comparison. And so what I found was that both hawks and those that are more liberal and even pro-American believe that China must stand up to the United States. And this was all pre-Liberation Day. Post-Liberation Day, the consensus in China has grown even stronger. And so for a whole variety of reasons, both economic capabilities and seeing this as an existential crisis, Chinese are actually pretty unified, and they are going to hold the line as long as they absolutely need to. So when the foreign ministry spokesperson says that, they're actually speaking for a lot of the population.
Hmm. So I'm wondering if you can build on that. How do Chinese people see President Trump, especially in his second term? And I'm curious the reason why I asked this question is that, a lot of projections show that the current rate of tariffs could slow China's GDP growth by up to 2 percentage points, which strikes me as a real blow.
Raoul, you're right. The high level of tariffs on Chinese export to the United States is poised to have significant challenge to China's economic growth. And the Chinese leadership, as well as economists, are pretty straightforward about it. And you see this even reflected in the front load of policy measures, both fiscal and monetary policies, as revealed during the National People's Congress in March. But I would say that perhaps the White House and the Trump administration misjudged the the willingness to endure pain at the leadership level, and even to some extent among Chinese entrepreneurs as well. The reason is not because they want a trade war. In fact, don't get me wrong, no Chinese officials or Chinese entrepreneurs, they would want a trade war. Trade war is not what they wanted. But I think the Trump administration's policy theater presented the Chinese leadership at least a cover to walk back some of those previous policy missteps without having to admit wrongdoing, admit making mistake, without having to embarrass the leader or the party. And then on the other hand, a lot of these viewing from Beijing's point of view, at least present Chinese state-owned media like People's Daily an opportunity to showcase President Xi Jinping and his viewpoint about the world is going unseen changes in 100 years, at least show additional evidence that President Xi Jinping has been right. So from this perspective, I do think that although neither Chinese leader nor Chinese entrepreneur or the Chinese people want a trade war, if this is the card that they are dealt with, their ability to endure pain this time around perhaps is stronger than last time, and they would have better tools to fight back.
Scott, this might seem crazy to ask, but given the number of policy flip-flops of late, is there a chance of some sort of a deal between Trump and Xi? In other words, could all of this drama be part of some art of the deal that I'm not seeing?
I do think at some point the two sides will meet, they will negotiate, there will be some outcome. I think there's going to be a lot of blood spilt still before they get to the table. And, just to reinforce what Zoe was saying, the Chinese wanted to negotiate, and they had actually already come up with lists of many things that they could offer the Trump administration. But then they were surprised by the 10% fentanyl tariffs that were imposed twice, and then the size of the reciprocal tariffs, and decided that they had to stand their ground. I do think they realize the U.S. and China, the world's two largest economies, two biggest militaries, they have to find ways to coexist. Now, a lot of Chinese policies have generated a lot of pushback from the U.S., their neighbors, and others. Chinese overcapacity in particular, and on the security side as well. I'm not sure how much they're willing to compromise on those things, but I don't think that their goal in pushing back is decoupling, is isolating the U.S. and driving our economy off the cliff. I think they certainly want to put a lot of pressure on the United States so that the Trump administration feels as urgent a need to negotiate as Beijing. But I think that their view is that eventually they're going to get to the table, and what they're doing is setting up what's going to be the topics at that table, who's going to be there, what the process will look like. Whether that happens in a few weeks or in several months, nobody knows.
And I should point out, this is a live show, of course. We're getting lots of live questions from our subscribers. That last one on a deal was coming to us from Juan Rock, as well as many others. Zoe, what are the chances of escalation into other domains? James Palmer at FP reported recently on a so-called revenge list of possible options Beijing might exercise, and that includes suspending cooperation on fentanyl, further restricting U.S. exports of soybeans or other products. Talk to us a little bit about how Beijing is calculating how far it can go, and what other things it might have in its arsenal.
First of all, I wanted to just say that James Palmer at FP is a great reporter and specialist of China and U.S. China relationship. So for the subscribers or any or non-subscribers of FP, please do become a subscriber if you are not, but follow James' work. I like his work a lot.
I promise I did not ask Zoe to say that.
No, you did not. But I just enjoy reading James myself. I do right now, in fact, I would say the risk of spillover to other broader strategic area, the risk is high. But in terms of militarized conflict between the United States and China, I would say that risk so far is low. Part of the reason is because the two sides remain having military to military conversation restored during the Biden administration. But that being said, I'm afraid that the way that the Trump administration singled out China and escalated tariff tension on China is putting a lot of other negotiations with the Chinese government at risk. And in fact, the Chinese government has expressed a lot of willingness to cooperate on fentanyl, not just in terms of chemicals, but also on money laundering. And the Chinese government would also benefit from cooperating with the United States government in terms of counter-narcotics as well as anti-money laundering. But that being said, I think the Chinese officials, although not President Xi Jinping yet, I think this is also the asymmetric dynamics here in the current round of trade tension escalation. President Xi Jinping himself has not come out and accused the U.S. government or the Trump administration. In fact, he has been very laid back. A lot of the fight back is at the ministry, the functioning agencies level. So this is also where I echo what Scott mentioned earlier, the challenges to come up with a negotiation list and even to bring the two sides together, the logistic challenges, the asymmetric part, how to find the right people, the right China hand here in the United States to negotiate with the Chinese. I think that is a huge hurdle. But putting that aside, the risk of stalling negotiations in other areas is still very much high.
And that was Scott Kennedy of CSIS and Zoe Liu of CFR. Stay abreast on all things US China and everything else on our website, foreignpolicy.com. And remember, you can always listen to this show and past episodes for free on our podcast. That is FP Live, wherever you get your audio. I'm Ravi Agrawal. Thanks for joining.